having 200 stores was something that, a lot of people would have been proud of, 10 years ago, right? But today, having 200 stores where 150 of your stores are in the red or are not profitable means you're not running the business the way you should be running it. And I decided early on that I was going to leave, my career as a medical doctor, as a practicing medical doctor, the day I completed my 2 years of housemanship in Klang GH. And that's when I embarked into, it was the journey into the unknown at that point. Today, entrepreneurship is a very sexy word, and it's a word that, I think, everybody likes using.
Yeah, but during your time
2 years ago. No, I mean, back then it was to me, it was basically just,
like gelap macam
it was moving into going down down that path of into the unknown.
Yeah. It's like going into a terowong yang gelap kan.
But I found it liberating. I found it exciting. I found myself being back at a phase in life where I had an empty canvas.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Nama saya Ashraf Khalid dan bersama saya
Ishraq Kamaruddin.
Selamat datang ke Apa Cerita, di mana kita mendengar kisah individu-individu yang berjaya dan menarik untuk dijadikan sebagai inspirasi dan teladan.
Yes.
Alright, Wak. Okay. So today kita ada a guest yang agak special.
Yes.
He's a good friend of mine. Walaupun kita baru kenal, tapi kita dah rasa macam brother-brother.
Yeah.
And I think he's one of the person that I also look up to, because his journey ni memang, for me, dia bukanlah macam kita ni macam at the stage of BBNU lagi kan. Dia
exploration
macam, dia dah sampai another level lah. And
execution
execution dia, and his network is global, and his brand is also a brand that I think
ramai
Malaysian should be proud of.
Betul.
And of course sekarang ni dah bercambah-cambah lah.
Yep.
Kan, dia dah merata-rata tempat lah. I think kalau kita sebut brand ni, lepas ni korang pergi mana-mana, mesti korang akan ternampak. Lagi-lagi kalau duduk lagi-lagi kalau korang duduk dekat dalam kawasan Selangor dan Klang Valley ni kan. Alright, so without further ado, what do you want to introduce our guest?
It'll be my pleasure.
Okay.
Yes, up. Okay, but before that, we want to reach out to everybody out there yang belum lagi subscribe ke Apa Cerita. Do subscribe, it's free. And also kita nak manfaatkan lebih ramai lagi orang.
Yes, kita
and
nak
also hashtag
nak ubah member. Kita nak make sure bukan kita je yang dapat ilmu-ilmu ni, tapi kawan-kawan kita pun dapat manfaat daripada ilmu-ilmu yang kita nak share ni.
Jangan berdosa, do share.
Imagine kalau apa yang korang share tu bermanfaat kepada kawan-kawan you guys, and benda tu berjaya untuk ubah hidup orang, pahala tu pun korang akan dapat juga. And
asset
kita
akhirat.
and kita buat benda ni memang kita nak make sure Malaysians have access to quality information and also can get themselves educated with real life entrepreneur stories.
Yes, and a lot of good stories today.
Yes.
So without further ado, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We're talking about someone who started out in the medical field, moved into social entrepreneurship by creating access to clean water for underserved communities. I'm thinking about 3 million people served up. So, and then almost unexpectedly brewed up one of Malaysia's fastest growing coffee brands.
Koppiku. Walaupun episod ni bukan dibawakan khas oleh Koppiku.
Ya, tapi boleh lah.
Mungkin later kita silent voice.
Okay. Your style. Alright. So what's really interesting is that this wasn't just another F&B startup. Koppiku was born out of a vision to make premium coffee accessible to everyone, with a brand and product that looks and tastes like something you'd find in Tokyo or LA. Maksudnya international standard up. Betul-betul power. But this entrepreneur, what is really, really interesting to me is the pivot punya story. Right? So let's
from
hear
a doctor to
an entrepreneurship, and also how fast Koppiku has grown. So from water tech to ready to drink coffee, please welcome to Apa Cerita the CEO and co-founder of Koppiku, Dr. Rajiv Banot.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. Thank you, Ishraq.
Hi, Doc.
I'm extremely excited to be here at Apa Cerita.
Thank you.
My
And-
first podcast.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
I've done a few things, but I've never done a podcast before.
Wow, such an honor for us to break your virginity.
Honor is mine.
Anyways, thank you so much, Doctor, for spending time. I know you live quite a bit of a
Distance from here.
Yeah, from here, and to give your time to us, we really appreciate it.
No problem. The absolute pleasure is mine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think I think this is quite interesting. Actually, we met at Oxford. Okay,
Literally
macam-
baru ni the program.
program that we went the other day, and that's when we first met. And I think from there you created a really great impression. I think everybody love you, and just want to share with you a few of the single girls, they are all after you, bro.
Serious.
Yeah.
But
From the 30 tu,
Ah.
at least ada 3-4 orang yang tengah nak berebut Dr. Raji.
Really, yeah?
So ada single kan.
I didn't sense any of that at
But
all.
Ashraf is well known as the Cupid.
The Cupid.
Mr. Cupid.
So I've heard.
Yeah. So any which one you like, he can arrange.
Yeah, tapi I think Dr. Rajiv has very high
High
standards.
standards.
mate.
I understand. So I also heard from Ashraf, Doctor, you were the president for the cohort, right?
Yeah, the class president.
Class president.
Yeah, I mean, it was such an exciting and interesting experience. A week at Oxford,
Yep.
and I think what really kind of stood out to me were the fellow Malaysian entrepreneurs that were there.
Yes.
I think we've got various different individuals doing extremely interesting things.
Yep.
Some of them are very uncanny in their business approach. And what was exciting was there were 30 of us there. The dynamics of those in the cohort were it was fantastic. And even after coming back, I've
Yeah.
seen so much of cross collaborations take place. So much of value has been unlocked. And I think that's the whole point and purpose of attending programs like this. So
Yeah.
kudos to you, Ashraf, and
Thank you.
the entire Oxford Leap team that sort of put together a very exciting week for all of
Yeah,
us.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we were quite honored, man.
Yeah.
And when we found out that Dr. Rajiv was joining, I was like, oh, really? That Koppiku brand? Because I told you, right? There is a store in front of my literally turun je my lift.
Yep.
Depan tu, kalau nak pergi kat kereta pun terpaksa lalu.
Your office.
Yeah, my office terpaksa
That's
lalu.
at Megan Avenue.
Megan Avenue.
Yep.
So, I see it every day. And I pun jelah dah hari-hari nampak mesti terbeli juga kan. And what I find out juga, Koppiku punya price is quite cheap. Because before this my team kan, diorang macam belagak bawa Starbucks kan masa tu kan. Tapi I don't know, after the whole Palestine punya issue apa semua, then people stop buying, and now I see more people holding this new green color, and at the same time I think they are spending like probably just half of what they used to spend.
Yeah,
kan?
we've priced all of our beverages between 5 ringgit to 9.90, and we think that is the sweet spot to make premium coffee affordable, right? For all folks of Malaysia.
Yeah, but we're going to talk more about Koppiku and how you started Koppiku and all that. But now I want to bring us back to your childhood.
But before you speak about childhood, I want to tell every viewer that you guys want to stay tuned with this story, because Dr. Raji here has built Koppiku to 50 outlets in the span of only less than 2 years. So you guys want to stick around to hear what made him who he is today, so that kita boleh belajar and be inspired together.
Yeah, and maybe that can be our title, right?
Yes.
50.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, take note. Okay.
All right.
Let's move
So
on.
yeah. So I want to bring it back to your childhood. So how was your childhood like? How were your parents like? Were they like disciplined kind of person? And is there any moment in your life that you knew that entrepreneurship was something that you wanted to do?
Well, I grew up. I spent almost all my childhood in Subang. And I went to primary school. I was in Bukit Bintang Boys School, and then I moved to Subang Jaya SS19 Primary School.
No wonder you ada gaya sebab you
Budak
budak
Subang.
Subang.
So then, I did my secondary school in Sekolah Menengah Subang Jaya, where I think a lot of my friends that I made in high school are individuals that have kind of the friendships have lasted till today. I did after high school I went to Sunway College, where I did my pre-U there. And then when I decided to study medicine, I moved to Moscow, which we can, speak a little bit about in a bit. But childhood for me was, we come from a very close-knit family. I've got an older brother, I've got a younger brother. My dad, he till today, he still, works. He's a medical doctor.
Oh, really?
He's a GP doctor who I think has dedicated his entire life to working hard, to provide for the family. My mom, she is, a housewife. My parents are still staying in the family home in Subang today. And I think my mom spent a lot of time, and again, she dedicated her life, raising 3 boys, 3 very, individualistic, opinionated, individuals. And I think, she always stressed the importance of, I think, unity, right, within the family. She stressed the importance of, siblings getting together, and maintaining a close bond, something that I think we've carried through, right, throughout the years till today. My dad was very much an individual that, was focused on academic achievement, right? So whether I played football for the school, whether I played football for the district, whether I went out, whether I was involved in anything else, that was very secondary to him, as long as the grades were produced, right? So I think academic achievements was something that we realized we had to deliver early on, and that gave us the free pass to do absolutely anything else that we wanted to do. Right? Yeah.
Understand. And your brothers, right? I heard your brothers are also, amazing people and people with. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your brothers.
Yeah. So my older brother Rahul, he is a chemical engineer. He was working with Shell for many years, and then they just relocated a year plus ago to Saudi Arabia. He got a job offer with Aramco. So he moved a year and a half back with his wife and his 2 very cute and amazing kids. They come back on Friday, so I'm looking forward to having them back.
This Friday
over here this Friday.
Nice.
And then my younger brother Sachin.
This one I hear a lot. Sachin.
Yeah, he's a character. So he was in Oxford. So he did his university studies there.
Wow.
And I think that's when he met Dato' Nazir Razak. Came back to Malaysia. He was a special officer to Dato' Nazir when Dato' Nazir was still with CIMB at that point. Then he moved to Dubai. He worked with his private equity firm there. They relocated him back to Singapore, headhunted by Edvardo Severin. So he worked, and I think
Edvardo Severin, the Facebook guy.
The Facebook guy, yeah.
Wow.
So he when he cashed out, he moved to Singapore, and then he set up a venture fund called B Capital. And interestingly enough, one of the first deals that my younger brother Sachin brought to B Capital was the early stage investment deal for Kopi Kenangan.
Wow, Kenangan Kopi.
Indonesia. I think
in Indonesia.
Even Steve Harvey is involved with Kenangan, right?
Yeah, so I think they and Kenangan have done phenomenally well.
Yeah, very
right?
impressive.
And I think the Kenangan
Unicorn right now.
Unicorn,
Unicorn
status.
company, and I think they kick-started that whole sentiment towards local brands, right? And I think the coffee industry is one that has been for decades, I think, monopolized by a few big international names. So I think the Kenangan story was a story that inspired I think, a lot of other brands, in Southeast Asia. If we look in the Philippines, you've got Pickup Coffee that's doing phenomenally well. Over here in Malaysia, Zeus has. I mean, Zeus was the first, localized, big name that have scaled and grown, right? Very aggressively in the country. So Sachin is still in Singapore at the moment now. He's moved on and he's leading a venture team overseeing investments in Southeast Asia and Australia. But he has played important role, right, in me moving into the direction of
entrepreneurship,
starting Koppiku, right, per se. So Sachin invested early in Koppiku as well.
Wow.
And it's crazy how I speak to him 3 times a day on the phone, and all 3 times it's based, it's Koppiku centric, right? So
not like I miss you, brother. Tak ada.
No, I don't think either of us miss one another because we speak enough to one another on a daily basis. He's just had his first child, 3 weeks ago, right? So that's very exciting for the family.
Congratulations to you too as a new uncle. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been I think a relationship, within the family that was something that was very important to us. The family home in Subang. If we just move back to the question that you asked me, that was always the hub. So even growing up in primary school, secondary school, there were always, at any one point, if you came to my parents' house in Subang, there would be 5, 10 guys that were there. There was always food on the table. The doors were always open.
The boys' friends,
Yes, so these were all friends and school friends. So my parents always encouraged, friends to come over, right? And I think a lot of them, felt like they were part of the family, right? And I think that these were values that were instilled very early on, right, to all of us. And the older you get, I think the more enhanced these values become, right? And even till today, I make it a point to, if I'm in town, to have lunch with my parents every Sunday. And it's a grounding space, right? So regardless of what I'm doing or what I've done or what I'm experiencing, 2 hours or 3 hours of lunch with the family brings me back down to earth, right? And keeps my feet firmly locked into the ground. And I think it's very important, right, to have a foundation that creates check and balance, right, to anything that we do. Right? So good times, you stay humble, you stay grounded, right? Bad times, you learn to persevere, right? And I think that just builds consistency in the sort of character that you are as a person generally.
Also like a support system and whatnot, right?
And I think your parents did a really
Great job.
Good job in raising the boys, and you turn out to be someone. No wonder lah, you are someone that a lot of people can talk to easily. A lot of people are comfortable with you, because I think earlier on your experience, you've always had that kind of environment, right? So I think,
but it's also a very, it's an interesting environment, because dinner time, at the family, we have got 3 or 4 or 5 very independent and opinionated individuals. So, our conversations at dinner table, would till today, covers, religion. It covers the concept of religion. It covers spirituality. It covers politics. It covers, everything. Right,
spectrum tu besar.
The spectrum is big. It's almost a podcast by itself. Right? Dinner time, with the family, and I think that's also allowed us to have our own independent thoughts. Right, my parents have always encouraged us to do whatever we want, so we've always had that element of independence. I think right from day one, none of us were told what to do or what career path to take, so to speak. And I think, that was a very important base for us to kind of shape the way we looked at things and approach things, as we moved into different phases of life.
And based on your own passion and whatnot. But so, Doctor, I'm quite interested to know, like, you're, of course, very successful. Your brother Aramco is a big company, and then even your younger brother as well, like exactly. From the story, very, very successful. What went right, you feel, to summarize, so that the viewers can also take some parents out there,
key points,
key takeaways that your parents did well,
what they did right,
right for you guys as you guys grew up.
I mean, I think there's no shortcut to working hard, right? I think hard work is something that a lot of people look at different industries. They a lot of these young budding entrepreneurs look at Elon Musk and say, I want to be the next Elon Musk. Okay, fantastic. It's great to have that aspiration or that dream, but then I think there's no shortcut when it comes to working hard. I think being willing to persevere. Right, this journey of life is not ever going to be one that's linear. You're going to have good times, you're going to have bad times, right? And I think the sooner you understand that, the more prepared you get, as an individual. Stay grounded during the good times, stay humble, communicate, have a group or a support system that you have, during the good times as well, and then persevere during the bad times, right? And it's always going to have, you're always going to be experiencing this up and down, right? And I think just being, having values is important. running a business, do things in an honest manner, right? Making money is not a crime, but make decent money decently, right? And I think, money should be a byproduct of doing the right things, right? And when you hold on to values, when you hold on to a strong foundation, you don't lose yourself, right? And I think essentially that's something that was important. The importance of education, right? That I think came a lot from my dad, right? Of course we were younger and we were rebellious, and there were days where I should be in school, but I was out in the snooker center in SS15, and I play good snooker, by the way, and
so look, you win the bets.
We needed to make a bit of extra pocket money, but I think the importance of education, right?
Even though you were doing some naughty stuff, you were still focusing on your education.
To us, delivering the academic results was the free pass that
prerequisite.
To then do anything else we wanted to do, right? So I think the importance of having a strong foundation when it comes to education, you don't see that importance early on, right? And when you go to school and you're rebellious and I want a ponteng class and I don't want to be there, but the older you get, I think the more significant it becomes having that strong sort of academic base. Right.
I have a question, but something that I think a lot of especially the younger generation, they are facing this. Sebab ada banyak, for example, this DMA Islam guy yang semalam they had the fight tu kan. So this guy, he said like education is not important. He said like belajar meskom is a waste of time and stuff like that. And they don't feel education is important, and a lot of people also agree with it. They feel like macam kalau they don't have to waste 30,000-40,000 on pergi belajar. Instead, they go and do what they want to do already at that age. For example, when they are 18, 19, they orang kata nak jadi influencer. So they want to straight away become an influencer, and they think, that is better than going for school and stuff like that kan. And so what's your thoughts on people who thinks that way? Like, nowadays education is not important because you have AI, because you have all this like internet and stuff. So what's your thoughts?
I mean, if you ask me, do we need to evolve, right? I mean, I think our current education syllabus is a little bit backdated, right? And I think there's a lot that can be done to sort of adapt, enhance and adapt. Right, as if you talk about the education system as a whole, right? Because just look at what AI is doing, and it's transforming and it's disrupting so many different industries. The sooner you jump on and you understand how this can help improve you, right? Whether you're running a business, whether you're leading an organization, whether you're just getting your tasks done, as an employee, right, of a company, but all of that boils down to education. Right, I think and anyone who says that education is a waste of time, the basics, right? Your numbers, running any business, it's cash flow is important, right? Understanding basic, finances is important, right? So I would totally beg to differ, right? It's a simplistic approach to take to say that I don't want to study, I don't want to have an education, I just want to be an influencer, but it doesn't build solid foundations and you don't have a strong base. And if you try building with a weak base, there's a certain level that you're going to be able to get to before you start feeling wobbly, right? And then the entire sort of infrastructure that you built is going to collapse. Right? So education is something that
that's a good way of putting
the foundation
it. The foundation, and you're right, exactly, because kalau kita bina something besar tinggi, foundation tak kuat, jatuh, then you die. And then once you are not relevant, then basically you're done lah. Then you cannot go back into work or cannot go back anywhere because you don't have that foundation again.
And if you look at, if we jump back to the week that we spent in Oxford recently, right, a couple of weeks back, it was based on education, right? And it was 30 or so individuals or entrepreneurs, and some of them were doing, are doing phenomenal things today. And you would ask yourself, why are they going back to learn, right? Because I think learning is something that never ends, right? And the more you can keep building, if there were 3 or 4 key take homes from my week with you guys at Oxford that I have started applying to my day-to-day life today, right? It's brought more value to me, right? So I think it comes with ignorance. It comes with that youth naivety sometimes, right? And that's why I think it's important for a lot of the young individuals that are looking at moving down the journey or moving down the path of entrepreneurship, using social media as a means to sort of build a career on. It's important for them to also then hold on to the right mentors, right? That play that right role early on in shaping the way they think.
Yeah.
Exactly. Speaking of education, right, Doctor, I think you are the best person for us to get this input from, because I hear a lot of young people, they say, I studied, but I don't use what I study. But you made a bold decision to pursue medicine in Moscow. What led you to study, Doctor, at Sashunov Moscow Medical Academy? And Sashunov. And how did that experience shape you to who you are today? Because you did medical doctor, and how from that transition into entrepreneurship, would you say what the
is there
normal saying? Yeah,
like people say, like looking back, you connect the dot, right?
Correct.
Was there any dots that you connected when you were why you did that?
Looking at back now, 100%. Right. So moving back to the decision for me to study medicine, it was something that as I was completing my pre-U program in Sunway College, medicine was something that I said, why not? Right? Was medicine a passion that I had, from my childhood? The answer is no. But I said to myself, look, I need to pursue, right, a degree in university. So why not medicine? It was perceived as being one of the more difficult degrees to pursue. But my condition was that I would go to a university or to a city of my choice. And what I did was I got a list of all the recognized medical universities that were recognized by the Malaysian government. I think there were about 140 universities, and the one university that absolutely stood out to me was the Sechenov, right? Or it's known as the Moscow Medical Academy, number 1 ranked medical university in Russia. And the year, it was 2001 when I applied. That was the first year that the Malaysian government had recognized 5 medical universities in Russia. I knew nothing about Russia. I knew nobody in Russia. I knew nothing about the culture in Russia. I couldn't speak a word of Russian, besides vodka.
Vodka.
So I was 18, and I was young, and I was full of life, and there was a rebelliousness in me, and I was looking for adventure. And I made it very clear that if I was going to study medicine, then I want to do it in Moscow, because I wanted to also, have a 6-year duration of, having or building an adventure. So I got to Moscow 2002. And right from the time I landed...
Wow, you're old, man.
I've given away too much, I think. No more numbers coming from me.
2002, you were 18.
2002, I was 18, so you do the math. Still young at heart, Ashraf.
I'm kidding.
So I went, from the moment I landed in the airport in Moscow, and I realized that not a single person spoke a single word of English. People were rough, right? The Soviet Empire had collapsed in the 90s, and the country was going through, so much of change. And
revolution, it was a revolution period.
They had just moved out. It was the first time that Russians had seen homeless individuals. During the Soviet Empire, everyone still had a roof above their head. Everybody had, food on the table. The basic necessities were provided for. Post the Soviet Empire, I think that's when we started seeing this massive divide in society, right? A small percentage of population owned, a large,
Everything.
percentage of the wealth, right? So that left a big
The
number of
oligarchs,
individuals.
is it?
Nothing.
Yeah.
The oligarchs were there.
I could imagine this time there was no Google Translate,
Nothing,
right? Nada.
Now I feel old. But there was, and it's.
I mean, if there was internet, but it wouldn't be that fast, right?
Smartphones wasn't there yet.
there
at
were
that
no
time.
smartphones.
Yeah.
There was no internet. There was a firewall where you could not get phone calls
Oh my
made
God.
from outside of Russia
Wow.
into Russia. And I actually had a physical dictionary. I don't know how many of your young listeners today have actually touched, a physical
have.
dictionary.
I hope you guys still know what a dictionary is.
Means, yeah.
so
Just to give that imagination, to the viewers, right?
it was pretty hardcore. And I think, being thrown with these challenges. I think 2 days after I got to Moscow, I said I've had enough of an adventure. and I said, shit, I've got another 6 years minus 2 days, right, left to go. But it's not just that. And then I got there in August, September. By the end of September, early October, as October went to November, the temperature started dropping, right? And, when I got there, it was 20 degrees. It dropped to 15 degrees, 10 degrees, then it became 5 degrees. It was the first time where I had experienced, zero, right? And then it started going down to -5, -10.
Oh my God.
As a Malaysian,
My first winter in Moscow, I think it went down to like about -30
Oh
degrees.
my God. Are you serious?
Just so you're dealing with the language, you're dealing with society, you're dealing with the weather, you're dealing with, 2 hours of sunlight during the day, right? That psychologically also takes an impact on you. And we had a small cohort of Malaysians that went. So we were the first, a batch of Malaysians. There were some Malaysians that were there before us, but this was the first cohort that went to Moscow when universities were recognized. And I remember my first winter, and you would gravitate and build a relationship with a fellow Malaysian. It was just a handful of us that were there, and there was this friend of mine, who was a Malaysian girl by the name of Melissa, and we would spend a bit of time traveling. It took me about an hour and a half to travel by public transport to class, and we were coming back, and she was sharing, some of the issues she was being faced with. Classes were conducted in English, but it was, the academic syllabus was heavy, and it was, and I think it all got too much to her. And she, there was a day where we got back to our hostel, and I heard a commotion take place. This is my first year in Moscow, and Melissa had opened the window, and what led her to jump out of the window till today, none of us would know. And I think that's when it kind of hit me early on that
she killed herself.
She passed away. And I think early on, I think these kind of incidences that happen, it takes an impact. It kind of matures you. It makes you look at things from a different perspective. It makes you realize that, life can be fragile as well. But this was all in year one. Right, in during my time in Moscow. So if you forward, I think the 6 years that I spent there, I always say this, that I went to Moscow as a boy and I left Moscow as a man.
Wow.
Right. So I think those 6 years that I spent in Moscow were significant for me personally. It was very, very significant where I think I built a lot of survival traits, right? And to me, the city was rough, crime was high, right? I learned to adapt. I learned to speak the language, right? Our course was a 6-year course. The first 3 years was in English. So you have got a 3 years head start to pick up the language, but beyond just the academic studies, you would have to learn the language to survive. And if you want to thrive in a foreign land, if you want to thrive in a city like Moscow, you have to learn the language, right? Because I was never going to be satisfied, just isolating myself into a little student bubble, right? I went to Moscow for, I wanted to, know the city. I wanted to explore. I wanted to learn a lot of these traits, these early survival traits. Today, I look back at them and you go to business school and these are all traits that are entrepreneurial traits, right? You learn to persevere, you learn to have a vision, you learn to, work towards adapting, you work towards innovating, right? So these are traits, and I think a lot of these things I didn't know back then, right? But these traits that I think I developed during my days in Moscow, if I had not spent 6 years in Moscow, I wouldn't be half the individual that I am today, right?
And I think that is also an important point that we can highlight is, like, especially for students, right? I think when we go to the UK, I meet a lot of students, especially from Imperial, LSE, all the big universities, right? And I think that is also a very important message also, which is to explore the whole city and also get to know people beyond your Malaysian bubble, because then you will really understand the whole culture of where you live, and you can really learn, you can maximize your learning. Would you agree that?
And I mean, fundamentally, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go to a city like Moscow.
Yep.
And I agree 100%. I think the mindset of Malaysians, and of course, it's nice to have, your comrades with you. The cohort of Malaysians that I went to Moscow with today, we are still such a close-knit group of individuals. I just want to, just maybe give a special shout out to all of them who have done significantly well in
all
the medical
survivors
space over here, right? So my Russian comrades, have done the country proud, right? Coming back and so many of them are specialists and consultants now, and have achieved the topmost academic achievements within the Malaysian Ministry of Health. They've moved out into the private sector and are doing well there. But the importance, coming back to what Ashraf was saying, of moving out of your comfort zone, right? That would have to me personally, that would have just not given me a fraction of the experience and the exposure that I was faced with.
I think
during my time there.
The exposure is the key point, right?
Yeah.
Because when you have a wider worldview, then you tend to do better things also, because you are more aware of what's
exposed
happening. You are more exposed, right?
Fun fact, guys. Dr. Ajit used to go to the cohort with one of our guests as well, Dr. Hanan.
That is doing Hanan Medispa.
Correct.
And has 130. You have some catch up to do.
I have to catch up. Hanan, we're coming for you. Slowly but surely.
Industry, maybe you can share some experience with Dr. Hanan, because I think I mentioned Dr. Hanan is also one of my mentor, and he's someone that I really look up to and I really respect, because he has not only done well, but he has helped so many people, and he has given back to the society in a massive way, which I really adore about him.
Yeah, so Hanan and myself are very good friends. We both were in Moscow together in 2002. I went to the Moscow Medical Academy. Hanan was at the Russian State Medical University. So he was, in a different university in Moscow. But, our paths did cross many times in the early days, right, of us being there. I think our love for sports is something that united us. I used to be very passionate with football from my early days, in growing up in Subang, all the way till, my time in Moscow. I think Hanan and myself, Hanan had spoken a little bit about his mentor, right? And I think
the ambassador.
It's funny how the impact that the late ambassador Jangan, who was the ambassador of Brunei to the Russian Federation, and he had a similar impact to me, right? And I think that's why I said earlier on that the power of having the right sort of mentor is something that's important, right? So I think the late Ambassador Jangan, he opened up. When you're young, when you're 18, when you're 19, when you're 20, I think there are different things that aspire you, right? And I think Ambassador Jangan, gave me a preview, right, to the sort of lifestyle He took us out to nice restaurants. We went out and we had, exciting, experiences. He hosted dinners at his house,
Different leaders and
right?
stuff, right?
And he was so grounded. He was so humble. He was so down to earth. Treated us students, like we were part of his family, right? He treated every one of us with a lot of, care and respect, and he would listen when we spoke. He was kind. We were broke students, in Moscow. He was generous, these small things that maybe in his mind he was doing, I think the impact that brought, a big group of us, right? Hanan and myself included, was something that is priceless, right? So we don't realize, and Ashraf, Ishraq, people like us, we've got employees, right? We've got people that are working, within our organizations. And sometimes the way we conduct ourselves, we don't realize the impact of what we say and what we do, that impact. And I think if we always keep a conscious mind of trying to ensure that impact is a positive impact, right? I've had bad days where, and maybe in my younger days, I was a little bit more sort of volatile, as a leader, right? And I might, say something that to me was how I felt, not realizing that the consequences to a younger individual in the organization, it might be detrimental to them. Right. So, I think we play that role, right? And of being able to provide a positive spin, right? Onto, the lives of, the individuals that work with us. So that was, essentially, I think, the experience that I had with Hanan in Moscow. We came back in 2008, graduated at the same time. And I think Hanan's perseverance, right? His vision to what he wanted to build, over here in Malaysia with his Medi Spas, and he started from scratch.
Yeah.
Right. He openly talks about how he had failed in a restaurant business. And speaking and embracing failure, I think is also a very important trait to have, right? You want to be a successful entrepreneur, you have got to, be willing to, learn from your failures, right? And anyone who perceives themselves as being an individual who has not experienced failures, then it's not being true to themselves, right? So kudos to Hanan and what he's done, he is one of many, I think, Malaysians who've come back from a very, very, a rough city like Moscow, and I think, who's done phenomenally well back here in Malaysia.
And I'm so amazed that these two people who I really look up to actually came from the same, sort of mentor as well. Because I think mentorship, I don't know if you agree with me, but I think mentorship is something that is really important, especially when you do business. Not just in business, even when you work, right? Your boss is actually sort of your mentor. If you take him as your mentor, then you be able to learn more.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. So I think, mentorship is something that is crucial in an entrepreneur's life.
A lot of entrepreneurs I hear as well, when you are like your first 20s, when you're like in your 20s, you should learn from somebody.
I mean, I was saying that I think I've been very blessed, because I've had mentors that have emerged in my life. I've not actively been trying to look for these mentors, but they've come into my life at the right time, in different phases of my life. And these are individuals who I think have significantly impacted, my journey, right? In a positive manner. These are individuals that I still hold, a very dear and close relationship with. These are individuals that I still can turn to today, right? It's been, I've been blessed. Right, I've been blessed to have the right people come into my life at the right time, and I think that if I can play that role, right, of then trying to pass on some of what I have received back to the next generation, it's something that I actively try to look towards, right? So the importance of having the right mentors, I think, is important, because should these individuals who had played this impact in my life, should they have
not done what they
if
did.
they're not what they did, right? Or if they had brought the wrong values,
You would have been a different person.
A different
right?
person altogether.
Yep.
Right? I think they play a very important role in shaping who you are going to be.
Yeah.
moving
Any
forward.
notable figures?
Well, I mean, I think that these individuals listening to this podcast would know who they are. These individuals are prominent individuals, right? Who I think have, played this role, and they've done it out of genuinity.
Love and genuinity. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, Doctor. So thank you so much for sharing your journey. I think anybody that has gone through whatever, I was just imagining while you were telling us the story in Russia without smartphones and all this, it must have been extremely difficult. And I think that challenge has developed you. I'm definitely, I've read a lot of things. They say lean into people say uncomfortable scenarios, lean towards it. Even I'm trying to look in my daily life scenarios that are very uncomfortable so that I can develop myself. All right.
So I think after this we want to go into more of your career. But before we go into career, I just want to ask you, when you were young, did you have dreams? And do you think dreams are important? And at what age did you realize you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
I mean, I think, a few of my take-homes that I share now, retrospectively, with the younger, budding entrepreneurs out there. One of the things that I highlight is that, never stop dreaming, right? I think the one thing we have that belongs to us is our mind, right? And the day we stop dreaming is the day we stop progressing. So I've been a dreamer, I think, since my young days. Playing football, I had this dream that, I'll be taking the right wing at Old Trafford.
Beckham punya,
right?
position.
Didn't quite materialize. But I think that dreams are something that you have for yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't think you should limit your dreams to anything. Right? Dream and make it as wild as possible. Make it as crazy as possible. And your dreams do not have to be intellectual in nature, right? You're not out there trying to validate your dreams with anyone else, right? And if you, the younger you are, right, your dreams could be something as frivolous or as materialistic as, saying
having
that
a sports car.
I want a sports car. I want 5 sports cars. Right? Why limit yourself to one when you can have 5?
Why 5, not 50?
or the sort of house I want to live in, right? Or the countries I want to visit, right? And the holidays I want to have,
or even universities that I want to go.
Universities I want to go.
Yeah.
Absolutely, right? So dreaming is something that the type of dreams that I have for myself have slightly evolved. Right?
Everyone will evolve their dreams.
As different phases in my life, but never stop dreaming. I think that is that initial seed that you plant within you, right? And if you don't plant the seed within you, you're never going to see the growth, right? That you want to see within yourself, right? So I think dream and never stop dreaming is important. And you do not need to seek. It's a very Asian thing where every decision that we make, we need that decision to be validated. Let me sit down with my loved ones. Let me sit down with my friends. Let me sit down with my relatives. Let me talk about a business I want to build. And if I don't get the validation that I want, then my dreams get killed off by others, right? So I think dream, and you do not need to seek any form of validation to make those dreams a reality for yourself.
Yeah, it's a personal thing.
Very, very, very good advice.
Right. I think it's amazing. And I like talking about dreams because I'm also like you, I'm a dreamer.
Yeah.
And dreaming is free. And one thing I love about dreaming is that a lot of our dreams actually become a reality.
Correct.
Right? If you have 10 dreams, you put it down, you list it down, 5 years, you check, probably 6 or 7 of them will become a reality. So I think that is the beauty about having dreams.
Yeah.
I've always worked on this 10-year sort of duration, when you try to, benchmark your dreams to where you're headed. And, if you tell yourself you want to be here in 10 years from now, and this is where you are at the moment, you should be somewhere around here in 5 years, right? And if you should be somewhere around here in 2.5 years. But if you see yourself being here
Then you know you are
In 8 years, then you need to make some
change.
significant changes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right. And that's one way of just, I think, trying to also create a bit of check and balance.
Yeah.
When you're trying to make these dreams a reality.
Yeah, amazing.
I would suggest rather than gossip or talk about this when we spend time, like for us, right? When we spend time, we always talk about dreams. Like, what do you see? How do you see yourself 2 years?
And sometimes we just talk crap also, like, okay bro, nanti kita beli private jet ni, kita share.
Yeah.
You beli yacht, I ambil private jet. Kita just like,
So rather than gossip, talk about, what this person talk about me, what this person says about us, what this comment or whatever, we speak about dreams, dog. And I wanted to share. Yesterday, I watched my own vlog. I did this vlog about visualization, and I was talking about this space being, okay, later we're going to have podcasts here and all that. Yeah. I'll show you later. Yeah. So I was like talking about how this could, whatever, like Ashraf said, whatever we say, we actually,
Make it happen.
Correct.
Right? And you guys have done a super job, in a short span of time as well.
Yeah. Thank you so
And
much.
I think Jim Rohn said this: whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So with that, I think we're going to take a short break. And after this, we're going to talk about how Dr. Rajiv started Koppiku and how he grew it to be now in 1.5 years to having 50 outlets. So catch us after the break.
See you guys in a bit.
All right. Alright, welcome back to Apa Cerita.
Welcome back.
Kita bersama dengan Dr. Rajiv,
Yes.
Dr. Rajiv Banot.
Yes.
So
Impressive first half.
impressive, someone who can speak Russian, someone who, he told a story of your background, and I think from there pun, I think we have learned so much, kan.
Macam it's not a surprise to who you are today, right? It's not a surprise based on...
And one thing, Doctor, macam when I met you, kan, I told like Tanya and stuff, I told them, this Dr. Rajiv is very polished, man. He's like, very, the way you structure your words, the way you think, and he doesn't offend people. He always, know how to give advice that yang macam apa.
Kalau dalam Islam, kita panggil orang ni Masya Allah.
Masya Allah. Dia beradab, and everybody is like, selesa dengan you. Doesn't matter what background, pakai tudung ke, Chinese ke, Indian ke, everybody just gel very well with you. Even Tia, man, Tia also quite someone that is quite introvert, quite close, but with Dr. Rajiv pun dia macam quite open. So I think you have this amazing personality, and from hearing that story, then it connected the dot. No wonder he is like this, kan. Alright, Doctor. Now we want to move on to the next part of your life.
Yeah, but before that, I want to sarankan to the viewers out there yang mana belum subscribe lagi ke Apa Cerita. Do subscribe as it's free. And hashtag nak ubah member. Alright, let's get
maybe
back
you want to
into...
also shout out to them to help bagi
Subscribe.
lagi ramai orang tengok.
Yeah.
So I think this is a podcast that you guys have started. I think is fantastic. So I would want to ask those that are watching this that I'm going to be forcing a lot of people from my side to be watching this podcast as well. Make sure you subscribe.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
When you subscribe, don't forget to download the Koppiku app as well that we have.
Nice.
Right?
Good.
iOS and Android.
Yes, iOS and Android.
Yes,
you have
absolutely.
an app.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Amazing.
That's his plug. That's his plug.
Make sure download. Okay.
Make sure download.
Let's bring back to the story.
Yeah, Dr.
Alright.
Rajiv, before Koppiku, you are a serial entrepreneur.
Yep.
You have done a few things leading up to Koppiku. So maybe can you tell us about that journey of your life?
Yeah, you were a doctor. I saw you also did an event company, and also what really interests me is the H2Go, as it impacted so many, and it's throughout the world, right? Global feat, global movement with the technology that has. But what made the change, Doc, and also came to be?
So I came back from Moscow, right? And I came back with all these dreams and all these aspirations that I had for myself, and I started doing my housemanship, and I was placed in Hospital Tengku Ampan Rahimah in Klang, busy hospital, right? And government hospital, and I was there for 2 years, and I came across and I met some of the most dedicated, talented and amazing doctors in the country, right, during my 2-year stint in Klang GH. But from a personal sort of, my personal experience and how I personally felt, and I think it got to a point where I was working long hours, and my days started becoming a little bit too monotonous for my liking. My days were too predictable. That career path that I was expected to take was one that was a little bit too predictable, right? And it got to a point where, personally, for me, I was not waking up in the morning feeling motivated. I wasn't waking up in the morning feeling excited. And there were two, ways for me to approach that, right? I could have grumbled and I could have complained and I could have, just been a very bitter individual. And it was something that I had started doing, right? And I didn't like, that person that I was becoming, and I had a word with myself, essentially, right? And I said that, look, if this is not what you're happy doing, then you make the tough decisions that you have to make. And I decided early on that I was going to leave, my career as a medical doctor, as a practicing medical doctor, the day I completed my 2 years of housemanship in Klang GH, right? So I had, again, it's not something I shared with anyone. It's something that I kept, within myself. And the day I completed my housemanship, I had rehearsed, this resignation sort of speech to myself. Every day when I was brushing my teeth, I'd kind of practice that looking into the mirror, and I got my day, right? 2 days, on the day that I finished my housemanship, I met my hospital director and I said to her, this, is not for me, right? And, if I'm going to be in an environment, I want to be in an environment where I can win. Right. And my colleagues were, I think, a lot more dedicated than I was. They were a lot more motivated than I was. So I made the tough call and I quit my job, as a medical doctor. And that's when I embarked into, it was the journey into the unknown at that point. Today, entrepreneurship is a very sexy word, and it's a word that I think everybody likes using.
Yeah, but during your time,
2 years ago, no, I mean back then it was to me it was basically just
like gelap, macam
it was moving into going down down that path of into the unknown.
Yeah. It's
but
like
it
going
was exciting.
into a terowong yang gelap lah kan.
But I found it liberating. I found it exciting. I found myself being back at a phase in life where I had an empty canvas. It was on me to fill this canvas up now. And that's when, my stars were perhaps aligned.
Yeah, you became the artist.
I became the artist
of your own life.
Own life and destiny.
Yeah.
And it was then that I started my first two sort of like startup businesses. One was in the healthcare space, where I set up a medical aesthetics practice.
Oh, the
Phi Clinic is it started off as Face Factors Clinic. It's evolved into Phi Clinic today. And we're still there in Lorong Maruf in Bangsa. So if any of your listeners want to come and, have a pick-me-up, right, and glow themselves up a little bit, please do drop by.
Want to glow like Dr. Rajiv?
I'll drop by tomorrow, Doc.
And I think the other company that I built was my water tech company called H2Go.
H2Go.
Right. And, I stumbled across a technology that I enhanced and developed and built. And starting a business is always about identifying a problem and looking at what solution you can bring to this problem. And when I studied the space of water poverty, and this was, back in 2011, 2012, I realized that the problem that we are being faced with is, 1/6 of the world's population don't have any access to clean drinking water.
1/6?
Over 1 billion people.
1 billion?
We talk about, look at what Elon Musk is doing. We talk about space exploration. We talk about all these AI
stuff,
we talk about all of that. But today, we still have 1/6 of the world's population that live in communities that have got zero access to clean water.
Oh my God. Now I feel bad, man.
3.5 million people die every year because they don't they drink water that's contaminated, right? Women in a lot of these developing countries, they drop out of school once puberty hits because there's no clean water and sanitation. So the domino effect of what this, water poverty is creating,
culture that becomes
it's a humanitarian crisis, right? So H2Go was something that I started, and we developed a solution where we started rolling this out in rural communities, and we tapped into any source of fresh water, and we were able to produce clean drinking water without using electricity, without using chemical additives, and so on and so forth. So we rolled out the work that we were doing in a number of school villages here in Malaysia, and then we replicated what we did here in West Africa, and then we set up a company that's still there. So I've got a base in Colombia. You guys ever want to do a trip to South America? Let me know.
Yes,
I've got a wild team that's based in Bogota.
Wow,
in Colombia.
I heard the girls there are also quite pretty, right?
So I've heard. I've not seen, but yeah.
So do you go there?
I have a trip that was pending. But my team from Colombia, they do come down to Malaysia once a year. Right, so we do spend a couple of days together here. When I have a bit more time, on my hands, I would love to spend a bit of time in South America.
Far also, right?
It is far, yeah.
That's interesting. So, is that a business that is still going? The H2?
It's still ongoing. The company is still running. I am not actively involved. The company almost doesn't need me anymore.
You've built to what it is already.
I've got the right people that are in place, right? So it's something that's running on its own. Which is why, when the pandemic hit and I was based here, it gave me time to sort of, have a soft reset, and plot and decide what was going to be next for me, right? Because I am a person that if I have too much of free time at hand, I get restless, right? And I think that's when, I started looking and I had my first experience in F&B during the pandemic, and I set up an F&B establishment in Solaris Mount Kiara, but it was never going to be a business that was scalable, and when I was studying the space, that's when I think I stumbled across coffee, right? And how the coffee market, not just in Malaysia, but in Southeast Asia, was growing or still is growing exponentially year on year, and that's when I think I shifted my focus into the coffee space.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, now I think this is where I think all of the viewers want to really know, and the Koppiku story. Yeah. So how did you started, and
how did that idea came to be?
Yeah, and where did the inspiration come from? How did you get the name Koppiku? And things like that.
So I think it was a combination of a few things, right? And number one was I was looking at, I had gotten a little bit of experience in the F&B space, and I was trying to, see how I can build a model that I could, develop, grow, and scale, right? I had all the time in the world, to dedicate towards building, a new brand. And when I looked at the coffee space, I think it was immediately a space that I said I wanted to be involved in. We spoke briefly about the Kenangan story, right? And I realized, that there was a very strong wave or sentiment, when it came to consumers wanting to support something local, right? So I looked at this space and I said to myself, it's a very, very saturated space, right? It's a space that's growing. The market is growing exponentially year on year. But, how do I create a product that is better, that's cheaper, and that's more accessible? Right? So I think Koppiku came about, and has been built on 3 pillars, right? Which is affordability. And I said to myself, if I don't compromise the quality of our products, but I can price our beverages, we've got about 25, 30 beverages on the menu. And if we can price everything between 5 ringgit to 9.90 for all the caffeinated drinks, we've introduced coolers now, and we've brought that price down to like 350, right? So our price range is between 350 to 9.90, without compromising on the quality, right? And when you talk about a coffee beverage and you talk about the ingredients and the quality, there are three main components to it, right? So you've got your coffee beans, and we source our beans from South America. I've got, a team in South America that helped, with the process a little bit. We've not compromised. And, I think the Arabica beans is something that, has become very trendy, right? From the kopitiam Robusta type coffee beans. We work with milk is another, big ingredient or component of a coffee beverage. We work with the biggest brands, milk brands out there. Farm Fresh. We work with Oatside. So we're not compromising on the milk.
Wow.
And then, for your flavored coffees, you've got your, sugar syrups, right? So we're working with the most reputable, players in the space. So when you don't compromise on your ingredients, you don't compromise on your end product, right? So, building a business where we have got a product of the highest quality, but we are priced at a price point where, it's affordable to all Malaysians. I think that was the sort of basic business model that we looked at, right? So affordability, accessibility, and we didn't want to lose that aspirational side of things. We're living in a world where, consumers are generating content, right? They become your ambassadors, they become your spokesperson. Everyone has got access to social media, right? So, something that we can't control. Right. So, keeping an aspirational brand, that is accessible and affordable was, I think, the foundations of having Koppiku developed and built. Right. So when we were looking at a name for the brand, I think I was, we had a couple of different names that we had tested out there, wanted to see what the reaction was, and I was very keen on doing something that's, as Malaysian as it is. Right, Koppiku, my coffee, right, is a homegrown Malaysian brand.
Ku
right?
is also a very Malaysian thing, right?
Yep. Yes, so we added a second P to make it a unique
Trademark.
word, trademark purposes and whatnot. And it's funny because when we tested the brand out to some foreign groups that we had spoken to, they found it, a cute brand. Right, they found Koppiku a very easy. It's a nice.
I was thinking Happy Kiddo.
Happy Kiddo,
that kind of like very fun kind of. Kids also can relate.
Yeah, so that's when I think we decided to go with something that's very hyper, localized in terms of the brand, and the Koppiku was born. Right, so we had our first store open in September 2023.
Wow. Nice.
Where my office, had been, or still is at the moment now in Plaza Montclara, right? So that was the first Koppiku store that we opened. And I think, we've been razor focused on just keeping the brand, as a little bit more of a grab and go sort of a coffee chain, that is opened up in locations that are, easily accessible, right, to the consumer.
Grab and go kind of model.
Yes.
I want, just now I had a question, right, during the break, but I didn't ask. So in my mind, I think, I believe that one day Koppiku will be a unicorn company. I believe because, you have the pathway there, you have your brother there as well that has done it before that can also, help you as well. So my question is, how can I buy some shares of Koppiku?
Well, we will be fundraising quite soon, and I can have a side chat with you, after this.
I think that is something that we can, look into. Explore. I think it would be a huge brand, and I think Malaysia, Zeus, of course, is one of a great Malaysian brand also, but I think Koppiku speaks better to the local Malaysian market. And I think if we bring this Koppiku brand globally also, it will actually represent Malaysia. So I think it's something that is very interesting and can be wonderful. And I hope it does. And when you become rich, don't forget about me.
Always be grounded. Always be grounded. I think it was, look, yes, we do have a long-term plan or vision as to where we want to bring the brand. But my focus over the past year and a half, or just under 2 years, has been focused on, the baby steps that we've had to take, right? And I think when you're starting off any brand, that you're looking to scale, the problems that you're faced with when you're at that 0 to 1 phase, where you're still conceptualizing the brand, right? You're trying to, finalize your packaging. You're trying to ensure that your beverage offerings, cover, as wide a consumer base as possible. Those problems evolve when you're at store 1, to store 10.
Yep.
Right. And I think a lot of the teething problems then, or the issues we were faced with early on was, trying to secure locations, right? Landlords would say, who are you? Right? Who's Koppiku? Why should we give you a space? We are full. We don't have any, retail space left to rent. As the brand has slowly and organically, I think, build a bit of traction. We get landlords now approaching us, right? Asking us whether we want to take the space.
Yeah.
But the problems keep evolving, right? And then, I think at store 10 to store, 40, right? The big issue then was how do you manage and ensure that your store level ops is run and managed, in an efficient manner, because you compromise on your store level ops. You don't have your drinks produced in a proper manner, you're compromising on the product. At the end of the day, the consumers don't care about what's happening in your back office or what's happening on your HQ or how many meetings you're having, on a day-to-day basis. They just want to ensure that there is consistency in the product that they want to buy from you, right? So it's been thrilling. I've loved the problems and the issues and the stress and the adrenaline that I think the last 2 years or so has brought with trying to build a brand that you're looking to scale in an effective and efficient manner. I think we have a group of rock stars that have come together within the organization. As a business leader, I've always believed that you can have a vision and you can have the direction, but you need to have your generals and you need to have your soldiers that
Captains.
you can depend on, right? And they are the ones that can help you execute your dream and your vision, right? So you build people build the business. Right? And I think for me as well, a lot of importance that I have sort of stressed on is also building the right culture. It's I'm not looking at the end game as of yet. I'm still not going to say no to your money. I've got to pump some money in.
Hopefully the valuation won't be too crazy.
But I think building the right culture, right, within the organization is important. How do we then transform that culture down to the stores, right? We have got a young, talented group of store level baristas. They go through our Koppiku, coffee barista academy that we've set up. We've got a few hundred, young Malaysian boys and girls that are running the stores or running all of our stores at the moment now. 90% or so of these individuals, they're all in their young, early 20s.
Sorry, you have about 200 now?
We have got about close to 300 store level staffs at the moment now. And it's humbling that we've managed to empower 300 young
People,
Malaysians. 90% of them, their job at Koppiku has been their first job ever, right? So they have now
entry level, the first entry to the real world.
The first entry to the real world, and I think, how do we build a culture, not just at the HQ level, but how do we then translate that down to the stores? How do we make our, store level staff feel empowered? How do we make them feel that they are part, of a brand that's not just a coffee brand? We're trying to build a momentum, and like a little ground level, Malaysian brand that instills patriotism, right? That instills, some form of nationalism, right? And we want to just sell a positive story, right? We're living in a world where switching on the news, is depressing. It's negativity, right? Left, right, and center. You look at the Malaysian news as well. Everything in this country seems to be politicized at the moment now. How do we move away from that? How do we build a movement that is just, hopefully one that picks up momentum as we build and grow, that is just throwing and chewing and spitting and, sharing positivity. Right. And I think part of that, and that's why, that's what keeps me excited and thrilled is, just, being able to empower, right? A lot of, young Malaysians, and then their energy gets, sort of translated into the beverages that they prepare. And then hopefully that gets rubbed off to the consumer. Right. So that's been something that I have particularly found, very exciting about building this brand so far. We work with smaller mom and pop, food suppliers. We've got criterias, and, they have to be halal certified. They have to, obviously tick all the ISO type certifications, but we are helping smaller brands, right? We've got, 3 or 4 nasi lemak bungkus suppliers that supply nasi lemak bungkus to us. And they have come to us saying that, by us working with them, it's transformed their business, right? It's transformed their lives.
Because you've given access to market for them.
We've given access to market, right? So, it's building a brand. It's obviously building, a brand that we are very proud of. But at the same time, I think it's also about building, like I said, this community, right? Grassroots community that's, coming from a place of genuinity, right? So, with our stores, and we opened 4 stores in Kuantan. It's very exciting. With us being moving into Kuantan, Tengku Fahad, from Pahang, and his team, he came in as an investor. He's a director, in Koppiku at the moment now, and his team have brought great value on sort of helping us, unlock some of the locations outside of the Klang Valley. And even in Kuantan and Pahang, we're working with local food suppliers, right? It's created a little bit of positive buzz, right, within the communities that we, have our stores in. And I think that's the basis of what we're trying to build, with a local brand like Koppiku.
That's interesting.
MashaAllah.
All right, bro. I want to bring everyone to the side of the investment side, or I heard that you also have a few people on board. Maybe you can tell us a bit of story of how to attract this kind of investors and people to be on board of your business.
Yeah, so I think, a lot of the early structure that we put into the company per se, that credit I have to give to my younger brother. Because, I've not...
He knows what the investors want.
He knows what the investors want is one, but I think he knows the structure that would be exciting, right? And you want to bring a group of people on board that you can, as a founder, as a CEO, it's very important for me to have individuals within my organization that I can work with, right? Individuals within the organization that are aligned to the direction that, I want to take the company, and I think I've been very blessed that I've got a diverse group of individuals that sit on the cap table, that have brought, different skill sets, right? Without disrupting the sort of executive decision-making process and direction that, I think we've taken the brand. We are still a very, very new brand, right? So I think we're less than 2 years old. For Koppiku, our journey has just begun. Right, I don't think that there's still lots and lots of learnings that we are experiencing at the moment now. I've been fortunate that we have we've got 1 or 2 other individuals that are part of coffee brands outside of Malaysia, right? That have
Can you name them?
We have like the guys from Blank Street Coffee, for example.
They're from the US, right?
They're from the US and they've, they're in the UK at the moment now, right? So it's to me it's brought me priceless insights, right? And lessons to be able to get on the phone and spend an hour every month, right, with the co-founders of these organizations to share, right, and not looking at individuals in this space as being competitors or not, feeling that element of now, let's be hostile towards everyone in this space. I think, the more we can come together, right? The more we can, learn from one another, the more we can unlock value that didn't exist, right? The more we can share that value.
But what's the story? How did you get them to be on board?
I mean, they sort of reached out to me, and I think that we're living in a borderless world today.
So they heard about Koppiku.
I mean, we have got common friends and associates, and I thought it would be phenomenal, right, to have individuals that have already built very successful businesses in this space sort of come on board, again, it's just been a lot of sharing with individuals like this, so we can constantly just work on improving ourselves, right? And the mistakes that we've made, we try to ensure that these mistakes have been affordable mistakes, right? And the sooner we identify these mistakes, the sooner we try to rectify, the sooner we take these learnings and then improve and then move on from there.
That's interesting.
I'm quite curious, like, because Koppiku being in the industry of coffee and all that, I believe there's a lot of competitors. At the same time, not just indirectly as well, like other beverages company, like all these other brands. I can't name one now. And when you were talking to investors, right, do you have to explain the vision of Koppiku differently to get them on board? Like how was I would imagine it to be quite challenging as well, right?
So I think running a business that's being scaled, the markets are brutal today. Right. I think the fundraising ecosystem today is not what it was.
Correct.
10 years ago.
Not during this app days.
Look, 10 years ago, you have a plug point in your store. You call yourself a tech chain, right? And you have like sick money that's just being thrown your way. I think those times are over. If you want to build a chain or in any industry that you're in, if you're looking to scale, I think finding the balance between scaling but not compromising your unit economics of stores. Right? Having 200 stores was something that, a lot of people would have been proud of, 10 years ago, right? But today, having 200 stores where 150 of your stores are in the red or are not profitable means you're not running the business the way you should be running it, right? So I think as a founder, as a CEO of an organization, finding the right balance, right, between finding that right cadence of your stores or your new stores that you open, while not compromising on your unit economics, right? And if you can get that formulation right, then I think you have won 60% of the battle, right? And so ensuring that your proof of concept in your early days, right? Bring you the sort of numbers that you're looking to achieve, and then kind of scaling and building from there, right? So fine tuning, improving your playbook is important, right? And I think once you've gotten there and you have the unit economics, at stores that you are opening, and creating a strong brand helps in that sense, right? Then you're much better positioned to just focus on scale.
But I think, Doctor, you've only done this in like less than 2 years, and you have 50 stores. That is like, very fast. That is like, a super growth kind of, it's like on steroid kind of thing, right? So do you find that to be challenging, or do you find that to be exhilarating?
I think it's got, again, we're not chasing numbers, right? I think
you're not chasing numbers at this. I thought you were like,
numbers just seem to happen. No, we're not. We're not chasing numbers in the sense that I don't think we've set any KPIs internally when it comes to the number of stores that we're looking to open. Last year was our first full year in operation, and I think there were crazy amount of learnings that we had to experience, because like you said, it's a new brand. Yes, we have got friends in the space in different parts of the world that we've spoken to. We've learned from what they've done, but the Malaysian market is unique, right? It's a different market, to what you'd see in places like even in the Philippines and Indonesia. So we've also, I think, really focused a big chunk of last year on trying to understand, what is the brand? Who is our market? Right? Where would we want to be more present in? What has worked? What has not worked? For us. And I think that process has allowed us to kind of be a little bit more focused, right, on what moving forward, is going to look like, for the brand. We've looked at, we've been analyzing a lot of data.
Yep.
Our matcha latte, is our bestseller at Koppiku. I didn't realize there was such a big matcha sort of community in Malaysia. Matcha is huge, and there are fanatics, right, that are out there. We spend a lot of time R&Ding and localizing some of our flavors. And I've been very surprised at how some of these flavors have done, a lot better than we anticipated, right? I'm a coffee drinker and I enjoy my black, Americano, and I'm one of those, that enjoys my classic beverages. But, I think also aligning ourselves with the Malaysian palate, right, is something that has, worked pretty well for us, right?
Doc, how many stores did you close last year? To your first year?
So in the first year last year, we did not close any stores.
No, as in how many towards the end of the year? How many stores?
How many we had? So we started. We started the year last year with 3 stores, and then we ended the year with close to, I think we were like at about 35 stores.
Wow. So you scale while you were experimenting.
I mean, we look
with location.
We did a lot of things concurrently. We still are doing a lot of things concurrently, right? And starting a business, and I've always been the sort of individual where you can sit down and you can spend 10 years trying to work and planning and working on the best business plan ever, right? Or you could just get your business started, right? And then learn as you are moving, right? And I think that, a lot of people, and I'm not talking about those in the F&B space or in the coffee space, but, to your young listeners, I think out there, don't spend too much time just trying to perfect your business plan, right? And I know individuals who have spent 3 years, 4 years
just to do business plan,
building the business plan, and then something new happens. They tweak their plan and they work on your plan, and they're just building this little academic deck for themselves. My advice to them would be, academic deck. My advice to them would be,
a good way to punch people in the face, right?
That's not building a business. That's not going to get you anywhere. So my advice would be to just get it started, right? Get it started. Let there be some momentum. Learn, right? And evolve, right? And adapt as you need to. Do as you move on.
I think that is a very important aspect to entrepreneurship. A lot of people just talk about things. Of course, you can have dreams, right? And you can talk about your dreams, but in the end of the day, the important part is actually the just execution, the plannings. The executing.
But given this advice, right, Doctor, execution, yes, I understand, but how do you manage risk when it comes to while you grow, you do it concurrently without breaking? Without things breaking, what's your approach towards managing risks?
Well, I think you need to be a bit sober, right, in the sort of risks that you want to bring up upon yourself in a business. Now, high risk, high return, right? They always say. So you don't want to be moving down the path where you're playing it too safe as well. If I was to put that into context of Koppiku, playing it safe would mean that maybe we are at 2 stores today, right? Because these are the 2 stores that we know are stores that are going to be profitable and they're going to be doing well. But, I think you manage your risks, based on what, you can afford to expose yourself towards, right?
Very good.
You obviously don't want to now all of a sudden, take such crazy risks to the business where you're going to be disrupting yourself and you can potentially just cause an internal implosion, right? You don't want to do that. You don't want to be, you don't want to disrupt the team that you're building, right? So I think, you constantly keep taking these risks, but these risks are risks that you can, manage because there are going to be failures. There are going to be lessons you learn along the way. And as long as these are sober risks that you take, right? I think it's something that you need, right, in terms of growing the business.
Okay, Doctor. Of course, with having given all this, having all these people on board, people who are not small fish lah, I would say, kan, people who are experienced, people who has done it, does it give you any pressure to meet the expectation?
Yeah, you also mentioned, Doctor, like there's no internal numbers, right? But with investors, right, I would imagine that being, tough. They're normally for profits and whatnot. So how would you manage that?
Yeah, so I mean, the question of pressure, again, I think entrepreneurship, every young Malaysian that I talk to wants to be an entrepreneur, right? And I think it comes with a different type of pressure. I enjoy, right, the liberation that I have running a business, the way I want to run it, the way I want to build it. A lot of this pressure, right, I think is converted into like adrenaline for me.
Yeah.
Right. So I've almost become like a junkie that enjoys the sort of stresses that come with running your own organization. It's not for everyone, right? I think some people that I know, right, are a lot more suited being, an employed individual. They don't have to be worried about their salary,
Cash flow.
right? They don't have to worry about cash flow, right? And they can thrive in an environment like that, right? So, I mean, I don't look at this pressure as being something that's negative. There is a huge responsibility, I think, when you're building a business where, you have got individuals that have invested in your vision, that have invested in your dream. I take that very, very seriously, right? Because, I don't want to disappoint, and I think it just means that, the focus has got to be, 100% more sort of, it's a lot more serious, I think, right? When you are, looking at funds that have come externally. But at the same time, you also don't want to get yourself too swayed. Of course, right? Any investor that invests in anything, they want the maximum return in the quickest time possible, right? But you do what you think is realistically achievable, within your organization, right? So I think, it requires a little bit of, self-determination, right? To be able to kind of manage the cadence that you want to build within your organization, right? So it's and I run a very transparent ship. I think we have got, corporate governance is very important to me. Financial reporting is very important to me. There were various, scandals that have hit the region, right? When it comes to, corporate governance, financial reporting, and I think that's caused a lot of stress within the whole venture community in Southeast Asia.
You're talking about Fashion Valley?
I'm not speaking. I'm not speaking about anyone in particular. I'm actually referring to an Indonesian a company that recently was hit with these huge sort of scandals where they were keeping two sets of books. One set of books were for their investors. One was their internal books, which was the real books. And so I think again, right, it ties back very much with what we spoke about earlier on. Values, right? And when you have the right values, you have the right governance. Look, if things haven't worked at certain stores, if numbers haven't been growing exponentially month on month, then let's be honest about it, right? Let's be transparent with our investors and say, yes, I don't have the perfect formula or a magic crystal ball that can now give me all the right answers, right? And I would rather be transparent and open when we have issues and problems, right? And then to now just try to mask it all, right? Because we're creating an illusion that everything is well and great, right? So I think there have been learnings from some of these scandals that have broken up as well, and just to ensure that those that have come on board know that they are dealing with a management that is honest,
Trusted.
right? Trustworthy and transparent.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I think reputation, it also affects in terms of your reputation, right? I would say we had this conversation, Doctor, about reputation and how, because he was talking about reputation and I was saying like, I've read a couple of Harvard Business Review where they interviewed a lot of big business executives, namely Warren Buffett, and he said number one risk in businesses is also reputation. And I would believe it ties back to fundraising, as how you raise funds, is also due to reputation and whatnot.
Because
As
people
a-
trust you, if
Correct.
people don't trust you,
Correct.
who's going to put money on you, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think it's important to also build that trust in within not just the investors, but also within the society as well.
Right.
Yeah. All right, Doctor. Now we have moved to the last segment, which is called Hard and Interesting Question.
Ashraf's favorite.
Ashraf's
segment.
favorite part.
But yeah, it's not that difficult actually. All right. The first question is, as an entrepreneur, right, what was the biggest loss you've encountered throughout your career, and what was the reason behind it, and what did you learn from it? Like maybe monetary loss. Is there any big one?
I wouldn't say that monetary loss is something that I have not faced, but it's not been something that's been significant. But I think it was pretty much the pandemic that hit us in 2020, right? As an entrepreneur, as a founder, it's not something that any of us envisioned would happen, right? So I had this events company called Venuescape that was building and growing.
There was your company.
Venuescape was. I mean, I was one
digital platform, right?
Yes.
For people to find venue, right?
Absolutely. So
okay.
Venuescape we branded ourselves as your venue sourcing specialist,
Oh wow!
right? And
I always use that also to source venue for events because I did a lot of events, right? So
Yep.
I'm familiar with that.
interesting. And but I mean, look. So the pandemic hit, and I think the event space was one that was hit. The most brutally, right? And no one anticipated that this pandemic was going to last for 2 years, right? So I think making decisions where you have a company, you have a platform that was, building crazy traction. The momentum was wild. The number of users that we had were in the hundreds of thousands. But tough calls, have to be made at tough times, right? And I had to make a call to sort of, I say put the company to sleep or to rest, right? Because, we had a number of staff that then I used when I pivoted into some of the other, things I was looking at or ventures during the time of the pandemic. So closing off something, right? And that you've built and you've put your, blood, sweat and tears into, due to very, unforeseen circumstances. I think that was something that was painful to sort of digest, not just for me, but for the founding team, that had worked, relentlessly over a couple of years.
And I thought that was perfectly a nice platform to have because they have all the information, how many capacity, based on location. Even when I wanted to do event in Johor and stuff, you can find event space in Johor and stuff. So I think it was a really good. I realized I haven't seen that recently.
Yes.
Now if I search for it, then I'll see Colony or something like that. Now it's a different thing already.
Yep.
So maybe you should restart the engine with that, right?
Wake 'em up.
If I clone myself, I think I've got my hands tied with what I'm doing at the moment now.
Yeah,
But
that is such an interesting business also.
Mhm.
But okay. I think in every entrepreneur's journey, there's always something that maybe didn't take off or anything. But of course, there's a lot of things that you learn from that experience, right? Maybe you can share some of the learnings from that particular experience.
I mean, I think the biggest learning was, the trait that you need is to be able to, adapt and innovate, right? And I think that, businesses that don't look at trends, right? Businesses that don't have the ability to adapt and to innovate quickly, are the ones that then get hit and get, that get left behind. If you look at the AI space today, right? It's grown at a crazy pace, right? And I think, a lot of businesses are going to be disrupted. You can use AI to enhance your business, right? To sort of, make it, sexier and to make it more effective and efficient.
Yep.
But if you refuse to understand that there are certain trends that you need to adapt towards, it's going to be disruptive towards you, right? In the end. So to me, with what that whole pandemic, episode, it shut a door, but then it opened up, 3 or 4 other doors, right? And so you don't take these failures, as you learn from them, right? And then, move forward, right? Persevere. And like I said, when one door shuts, 3 or 4 tends to open.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that Wak's father always talk about. Like,
My
everything
daughter-
that happened to you is the best thing that could
Ever
happen
happened
to you at that moment.
point of time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's a very, and like you said, like, one door closed, many other doors open, kan?
And you look at this journey of life, I think, as, an individual that's skiing, right? You just let the slopes sometimes dictate things and you trust the slopes, right? You don't, those people that ski that, are using force to slow down when the slope is a little, or the gradient's a bit more steep. They're the ones that tire themselves out, right? So I think this journey is one where, look, you just, allow things to happen. You allow things to flow. You put in the best of what you can do, disappointments are always going to be there, right? Successes are always going to be there. And you hope that the successes, significantly outweigh the disappointments, and, you enjoy the journey, right? I mean, what's the point of doing all of this, right? If you look back, in 20, 30 years from now, and you tell yourself that I didn't enjoy any of that at all, right? Then that's pointless, right? So I think enjoying the journey is something that, is key.
Yeah,
Right, the slope.
I
and
have
if you
a,
fall, just get back up.
Get back up. Absolutely.
I have a cheeky question for you.
You sure?
If you don't mind.
I don't
If you mind, then we'll cut it out. Talking about one door closes and 10 doors opening, right?
Yeah.
You were also married before, and to Deborah Henry, and then things happen, and then maybe you can tell us a bit about that story. And did that shape you, or did you learn anything from that journey?
Look, I mean,
Tak jadi sangat
And 10 doors open.
no, it's I think that was obviously one of the disappointments that I've experienced in my personal life, and the only thing you can do, I think when you experience any form of disappointment like that, is to reflect on yourself, right? And I spend a lot of time reflecting on myself, asking myself, how can I be a better version of myself, right? What would I have done differently, or what will I do differently, right? When, I, walk through the next door, right? The only person that you have, I think, full control over is yourself, right? So, I wish, everyone, and I wish the people around me, the best, right? Always. And, like I said, life is this journey where, you're going to have your good days, you're going to have your bad days, you're going to have good experiences and successes, you're going to have disappointments. But if you can learn from your disappointments, if you can identify, right, areas that you can work on to improve yourself, to be a better human being, to be a better person, to be a better, husband, to be a better partner, I think, that's the value that you can bring to yourself, having experienced something that, you don't wish anybody else experiences.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing thought, because I think a lot of people, when something happened to their life, they like to blame other people, right? But actually, when you reflect on yourself and see what you can learn from those situations, that will make you a better person. And I think that is something that is very powerful, and also very a wisdom lah for all of us, kan?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor.
Doc,
Alright.
so knowing that you started as a doctor and then transitioned into social entrepreneur and now a franchising entrepreneur, right? So
Is it even franchising?
No,
Not yet.
we've not franchised
Not
any
yet.
of our outlets.
Into many stores.
distribute coffee retailer,
Yeah.
if I may, right? With those career and industry shifts, right? I want to understand, is this the final one? What's the long-term legacy for Koppiku? And do you see it as a stepping stone to something even bigger?
I mean, that's a great question, and I don't think I have a definite answer to that. Do I have, little seeds in my head, right? That I've planted, that might grow in years to come. I don't know, but I think if I've embarked on this journey, if I've committed towards embarking on this journey, I'm going to give 100%, right? To see it out. I would not start something with the intention of, ditching it halfway or not giving 100%, right? So look, life is unpredictable, right? If I look back at my last 15 years, I don't think I would have been able to have predicted anything that has happened. I look at myself. I think I've been blessed. I've been able to sort of, move down the path that I once only dreamt of. So I'm grateful, but at the same time, I look forward and I think there, will be adventures, right? That will be, that will happen, I'm sure. But what those adventures are, only time will tell.
Understand.
Amazing.
All right.
Doctor.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Doctor, I just want to ask, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years as a person, with or without Koppiku?
Well, I think I've gradually evolved right into that phase in my life where, I would hope that in the next 10, 20, 30 years, everything that I do and I'm working towards would be able to sort of build a legacy, right? And I think that, creating a positive legacy, creating a legacy that could inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs, the next generation of Malaysians, to work towards. I started from scratch. Was able to build what I've been working on, right? Because these things can happen, right? You can make things work for yourself, right? If you just trust yourself, right, and you trust the process. So the next, I would that would be a dream of mine, right? To leave a legacy that Malaysians can be proud of, right? Over the next 10, 15, 20.
Do you see yourself as a global player?
Look, we are living in a borderless world. I think anything is possible. We have got enough tech. We've got enough connectivity today, to be able to do anything that we want in any part of the world. The world has never been this small, right? The world has never been this divided, at the same time, right? So, I think if we can spend more time and we focus on, our little contributions that we can make, right? Whether it's as a business leader, whether it's as an individual towards trying to bring more good, right, towards humanity, and working towards just contributing on reducing that divide that we see, right, happening all around the world. I think we all play a part, right? So access to the world is something that we all have today, right? And nothing would stop me from sort of expanding outward, right? Should the time be right to do so.
Yeah, I think you should open one shop at least in Oxford, so that whenever we have class there, we can always have
that would be my first franchise store that I would give to you, Ashraf.
Yeah. Can I have one at least?
Yes, you can.
For Oxford, at least every time we go Oxford, we can have a £5 coffee.
Probably will be £5.
Yeah, probably.
£5 coffee.
Okay, Doctor. Sadly, we have come to an end of our show. But before we end the show, I always ask our guests to give a word of advice to the listeners out there.
Last piece of advice.
Yeah, last piece of advice on how to be the best version of yourself.
Well, it's been an exciting hour plus with the two of you today. So thank you for having me. And I think if there was parting words that I would share to your guests, I think it goes back to what we spoke about early on. Don't be afraid to dream, right? Start dreaming today, right? Don't be afraid to make the tough decisions that you have to make for yourself. And when you make these decisions, when you want to work towards anything, have the win mentality, right? And you have everything that it takes to be the best at what you want to do. None of us are born with any less ability, right, to sort of, reach for the stars, right? So I think it's self-belief, that we all need to have. I know people who have started from ground zero, that have worked their way all the way to the top, right? Every one of your listeners, here Malaysians, are equipped, right, with everything that they need to take on the world, right? So dream, believe and execute, right? That's what that would be my,
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for spending the time with us. I really appreciate it. And I think from your journey, I've learned so much. You didn't, of course, you came from a good background, parents that were doctors and, from maybe upper middle class kind of family. But your journey wasn't easy. You went to Russia, you did your medical degree and things like that. And you turn out now to be an entrepreneur that is rising, rising so fast. You became someone that inspires so many people. Your energy, your positive energy really, transcend the whole room, and people just, love the way you are. And I personally also want to thank you for inspiring me to dream bigger. And I hope, we can do a lot of things together and we can work and help each other to grow and reach our dreams.
Inshallah.
So thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you for having me here.
Any words from what?
Yeah, thank you so much, Doctor. I really enjoyed your session. It really inspired me. My favorite part was when you said when you're building Koppiku is about, I believe it came from your previous thing, your water go. Sorry,
H2Go.
H2Go, sorry.
Yeah.
From your previous stint, which was H2Go, giving back and how you built and tried to develop Malaysia and your community and giving back to Koppiku and building it as a community. That really resonated with me. And I learned so much, especially in terms of that. Thank you so much, Doctor. And hopefully we get to,
Yeah, and we'll be rooting for Koppiku
yes.
to be the next unicorn.
Yes.
All right.
I love that. Thank you very much, Ishraq and Ashraf.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Good luck.
All right. So thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I hope you guys have learned a lot. And if you guys like the episode, please do share with your friends and family, and so that everyone can learn from this amazing story from Dr. Rajiv.
Yes.
All right. Till then, we'll see you again next week. Assalamualaikum
much.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum.